You remember the marketing for Wish, right? Disney blasted tweets, trailers, and interviews saying King Magnifico was the most intimidating Disney villain ever. Like, really? Scar murdered his brother and took over an entire kingdom. Frollo tried to commit genocide and burn down Paris for lust. Ursula turned people into sea worms. And now Disney wants us to believe that Magnifico, a guy who says no to a few wishes, is somehow more evil? Disney failed this villain so bad he became a good guy. Magnifico is the type of person to be put in a room next to Frollo and come out of the room crying. This dude starts the movie off like some magical Mr. Beast. He's literally building homes, handing out wishes, and trying to keep chaos out of his kingdom. Honestly, he's the kind of leader you wish politicians nowadays would be. Disney is famous for making some of the most iconic villains ever made, especially during the 90s when we got a lineup of baddies so good that they were almost better than the movies they were in before they decided to throw in their twist villains. Well, we all know what happened next. Disney needed a twist villain. The writers had to force this dude to snap. They gaslight the audience into thinking he's evil because he doesn't want to grant every single wish. That's right. In a world where someone could wish for infinite money or immortality or worse, Magnifico says, maybe not, and now he's the devil. You can feel the brain cells dying just trying to figure out why he's the bad guy. And it only gets worse from here. However, this video is not just about calling out Disney for bad villain writing. It's about how a character with real potential was turned into a joke, why it happened, and what it says about modern Disney storytelling. King Magnifico is the worst villain Disney's ever made. Not because he's scary, but because he's so not. This might be the most accidentally hilarious mistake Disney has made in years. Alright, before we roast him too hard, let's see who King Magnifico actually is, because the guy didn't start out as the worst. At the beginning of Wish, Magnifico is straight up the badass of the whole scene. He's a sorcerer king who created the Kingdom of Roses, a literal utopia. Free housing, no crime, no starvation, everybody's got healthcare and glowing vibes. And the secret sauce? Magic wish granting. Citizens willingly give him their deepest desires and he stores them in little glowy bubbles. Then he decides which ones get granted based on one rule. It has to benefit the community. Not just the person, but everyone. That's not tyranny, that's leadership if you ask me. But here's where it gets weird. The movie tries to act like that's bad, like, oh no, this man isn't granting every single wish ever. But let's be real, that's his job. If someone walked in and said, I wish I was king, or I want every woman in the kingdom to love me, you'd want him to say no, right? Even when Asha steps in, her wish isn't evil, it's sweet. Her grandpa wants to inspire the next generation. But it's also super vague, like inspire how? What if the dude ends up inspiring a cult? It sounds ridiculous, but that's literally Magnifico's whole concern. He doesn't want to accidentally grant a wish that spirals out of control. You know, like that one episode of Fairly Odd Parents where Timmy wishes everyone looked the same and society collapsed. Yeah, Magnifico's just trying to avoid that. He's smart and not reckless. But instead of seeing him as thoughtful or cautious, the movie paints him as the fun police. The wise king who built a paradise becomes the villain because he thinks before granting reality-bending wishes? It makes no sense, man. The man is being gaslit by the script. Looks like this movie was already made, in my opinion, but then much better decades ago. It's called Aladdin, guys. You know, the movie where the evil villain abuses wishes in a short-sighted means to take a shortcut to power. The hero moderates his wishes and uses his last one for a truly selfless act. Unlike Asha, whose only motivation is selfishness. Because she throws a fit, her grandfather's wish specifically won't be granted. King Magnifico is not someone who starts evil and hides it. This is someone who genuinely wants to help. And the story punishes him for it. Honestly, if the movie had any self-awareness, it would have ended right there with Asha going, yeah, okay, I get it. Thanks for your time, Your Majesty. But nope. Okay, and what happens next? This is where things really spiral out of control, like Did the writers switch mid-scene? Levels of wild. So after Asha gets denied, she doesn't reflect or reconsider. Nope. She decides King Magnifico's cautious wish policies are oppression and goes off to wish upon a star like she's starring in her own personal rebellion. Magnifico created a peaceful society, and Asha lit it on fire because her wish didn't go through. The star shows up because, of course, it does, and now we've got sparkles, chaos, and an extremely confused king. Instead of taking this as a teachable moment or a deeper conflict, Disney hits the gas on turning Magnifico into a one-dimensional villain. And fast. We go from I'm protecting my people from dangerous wishes to I decide what everyone deserves in like 5 minutes. So as a watcher you think, what the F happened? Literally nothing. Nothing. Asha didn't expose some dark secret. No hidden backstory was revealed, no betrayal, no manipulation, nothing. The script just decided it was time for King Magnifico to go full villain because… plot? And then we get the villain song. Oh man. This thing is called This Is the Thanks I Get, and it's supposed to be his be prepared moment. But instead of menace, we get a burnout anthem that sounds like a guy complaining about his office job. I granted 14 wishes last year, that's a good percent. Bro, what? That's not scary, that's just Excel spreadsheet energy. Seriously, the whole song reads like a Yelp review meltdown. He's not evil. He's tired and annoyed. And honestly, same. If the entire kingdom lined up outside my castle every day asking for ponies and world peace, I'd get snippy too, but Disney wasn't done. Nope. Now enters the magic book. Out of nowhere, this evil spell book shows up like it just dropped in from another movie. Apparently it corrupts people or whatever, but the film never explains how it works or why it suddenly matters. One second he's a stressed out king, the next, he's got black smoke powers and glowing eyes. This isn't character development. It's character assassination. Magnifico didn't fall. He got shoved off a cliff by the script. There's no descent into madness, no tragic backstory activated, just, hey audience, he's evil now, okay? The worst part? The audience could have empathized. There was potential for a real ideological clash, caution versus freedom, safety versus desire. But instead of showing that, they went with evil magic book possession. So now we've got a villain who was never really a villain, a hero who barely struggled, and a conflict that feels like it came from a first draft no one edited. King Magnifico didn't become a monster. Disney just needed someone to boo at the end of the movie, and he was the easiest guy to throw under the bus. I feel really bad for Chris Pine. He gave his absolute all into his performance as Magnifico and hoped that he'd be remembered as fondly as the great Disney villains of the past. So King Magnifico fails, but not just as a villain, but as a character. Why? Let's start with the basics. His motivation makes no sense. At the start, he's selfless. He wants to help people, keep the peace, and grant wishes responsibly. Then suddenly he wants to rule through fear, destroy wishes and scream about how hot he is? What the fuck is this Disney? He's also not slowly corrupted. He's not backed into a corner. He just flips the villain switch like a light. And we're supposed to believe that he's now Disney's most intimidating villain? Okay, please. Frollo burned down half of Paris to get with a girl. Scar killed his own brother and blamed a kid for it. Magnifico said no to a vague dream, and suddenly he's public enemy number one. This is not the same tier of evil. It's not even the same sport. He's not even a villain. He's objectively in the right. Magnifico is a good person since he doesn't have to grant anyone's wishes. He's choosing to do this because he is kind and a great king. The whole town was asking him to grant all their wishes and got gaslighted for it. His villain song feels less like Scar's power anthem and more like a dramatic diary entry. No one appreciates me. I'm so alone. I granted wishes. Are you okay, dude? You sound more like a tragic workaholic than a tyrant. It felt more like a guy who just wants people to value him more than just his wish-making instead of a person being an egomaniac. And that's the point. Magnifico was set up to be a tragic figure. A leader cracking under pressure. Someone with power who doesn't feel like a person anymore because Everyone only sees him as a tool for wish fulfillment. That's powerful and interesting. But instead of letting him break slowly, the movie just makes him snap. Suddenly, he's crushing wishes, cackling like a maniac, and turning into a purple CGI blob. All nuance? Gone. Tossed out the window like Asha's logic. And speaking of Asha, let's not pretend she's some morally perfect savior either. She storms in, gets denied one wish, and immediately starts a rebellion? Imagine if every person who didn't get what they wanted from their boss started a musical number and led a revolution. That's not heroic. That's just lame. So maybe Asha is really the villain here? Well, how cool would it be, right? Imagine this. After being rejected, she could feel disappointed or mad, like Tai Lung from Kung Fu Panda, for not being chosen as the Dragon Warrior. So she gets the star and uses it to grant everyone's wishes. At first it seems good, and the star and her friends work with her, but she becomes more and more selfish, ignoring the wishes, having bad consequences. In the end, something really bad happens because of it, and she finally realizes the king was right, learning sometimes we can't get everything we want. Disney, are you listening here? It could have been so cool. I just can't believe Disney's wish failed when Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was right there. Okay, but even worse, the movie can't seem to tell the difference between an antagonist and a villain. A good antagonist challenges the hero. A villain is a threat to everyone. Magnifico? He's just a roadblock with good reasons. Until the magic book made him evil, he was making smart decisions. It's like the writers realized halfway through, wait, people might agree with him. And panicked. So they stuffed him into the evil book plot to force the audience to turn on him. The usual classic Disney villains own their evil. Hades is hilarious and ruthless. Maleficent curses a baby for not being invited to a party. They're bold, unapologetic, and charismatic. Magnifico? He spends half the movie trying to be liked, then turns evil out of what? Hurt feelings? You can't have a villain arc based on nobody said thank you. If you have to tell the audience that someone is a villain, they probably aren't. The worst thing is that Chris Pine actually gave a great performance. He sold every line, even when the writing was nonsense. You can feel him trying to give the character depth. But no amount of acting can save a role that has no idea what it wants to be. In the end, King Magnifico isn't scary, tragic, or fun to hate. He's just confusing. A character that could have been great but was bent into a villain-shaped box by a story that didn't want to take risks. He's not the worst villain because he's evil. He's the worst villain because he could have been incredible. But Disney gave up on him. Let's compare King Magnifico to other Disney star villains. Start with Frollo. The guy's terrifying. He justifies murder, racism, lust, and genocide by saying he's a man of God. He literally sniffs Esmeralda's hair while singing about how badly he wants to destroy her. His villain song, Hellfire, is one of the darkest things Disney's ever done, and it actually makes sense for his character. He believes he's righteous, even as he burns a city down. Then you've got Scar. This lion murdered his own brother, let his kingdom rot in famine, gaslit a child, and almost killed him too. Scar is smooth, calculated, and 100% evil. You don't need the script to tell you. His actions speak volumes. Ursula? She manipulates people into bad deals, steals voices, and nearly marries the prince just to get power. And she's fabulous while doing it. You never question her motives, her vibe, or her threat level. Now compare that to King Magnifico. What did he do? He said, hey, maybe I shouldn't grant every single wish without thinking it through. That's it. That's the crime. He didn't start out cursing people. He wasn't cruel. There were no evil henchmen or secret torture rooms. Just a stressed-out man trying to hold a kingdom together. Honestly, he's closer to Abuela from Encanto than any real Disney villain. She's a strict leader with trauma who pushes her family too hard. But she's not evil. She's human. She gets a redemption arc. Magnifico? He gets thrown in magic jail. Even Mother Gothel, a manipulative, gaslighting narcissist, is consistent. She wants eternal youth. She kidnaps a child and lies to her for 18 years. Every line she says has double meaning. Magnifico is neither, and he never will be. He didn't need to be a villain. He could have been a cautious leader, a tragic figure, even a redeemed antagonist. But instead, Disney twisted him into a mustache-twirling mess because they forgot how to write real villains. They had the setup for a deep conflict: responsibility versus desire, safety versus freedom. But rather than explore it, they said, just give him glowing eyes and let him yell. And look, Chris Pine tried. He brought charm, menace, and emotion to a role that didn't deserve him. His performance hinted at what could have been, a Disney villain who's more human than monster. But the script threw that all away. Meanwhile, Asha walks away with no consequences, no growth, no realization that maybe, just maybe, there's a reason not every wish should come true. She gets rewarded, while Magnifico gets locked up for trying to do his job. So, is King Magnifico the worst Disney villain? Congratulations, Disney. You didn't create your scariest villain. You accidentally made your saddest one.